Hello.
Good
Hello.
Hello.
morning. Okay.
All right, Chief.
Everyone,
I think so.
welcome to the 16th.
West Coast asked the Chief.
Sorry.
I did have that. Anyway, this forum we're going to be reviewing Wreck-It Ralph, and I believe it was Ralph Breaks the Internet. Is that
Yep,
what it goes?
that's right.
Yeah. Anyway, so is there anything we want to announce before we get going?
Not that I know.
Okay, all right. So I guess Ms. A is going to do the usual. She's going to start reading the synopsis, and then we'll just, go from there. So anyway, starting as usual, going to give you that bump, hands approximately 12 inches apart. To feel that energy starting to build between your hands. When not feeling it, let me know. Okay. I'm increasing it.
Chief Sair's not feeling it.
Okay, Sire, I am going to focus on you. Welcome again.
I can feel it
There
now.
we go.
Thank you.
You're feeling it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to increase it. You should feel an increase in the flow, increase. Anyone not feeling it? Okay, great. So I think I instituted the exercise I've taught a number of you, and then we're going to do the containment. So I'm going to do this clearing exercise that all of you should actually be in tune with. Actually, there's a few of you I haven't done it with because you haven't had sessions in a while. So here we go. Following me. You should start to feel that energy flowing, the tingling in your arms, in your hands. And your breathing can be however you want it to be. No regimen. Just make sure you're breathing. And one more. Now on the containment. I command containment. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So pushing out that energy beyond the walls of the rooms you're in. Okay. Very good. Okay, Ms. A.
Okay. Sorry for cutting you off there. I forgot to put the sign where it says West Coast, so I quickly put
Oh.
the sign.
Okay.
Okay, so
No
let's start
problem.
off. Thank you. Let's start off as we can either do the questions that I did, or would you like to
Well, let's start with the
this beginning?
beginning,
Okay.
and then if there's a point where any of the questions are pertinent for where we are, then we'll start to address questions. Okay. Okay.
So when the movie starts out, they're at Tapper's. It's Vanellope and Ralph.
And Tappers is.
Tapper's is a root beer bar,
Mhm.
and it just talk well, Ralph is usually doing most of the talking, but he's talking about it, his life and including Penelope in it, and just saying that his life is perfect because he has a routine. Then they, like, she's showing some signs of like where she's not so happy with it, but she's not really, talking about it because she sees how intent Ralph is that his life is perfect, so she didn't want to argue with him.
Or more or less, I guess, burst his bubble.
Yeah, burst the bubble.
Yeah.
This whole, a large part of this movie is about him roping her into his life and then, like, pretty much like bullying her into being his company.
Yeah, well, in essence, just, from the start of this, of the movie, everything is pointing to Ralph being selfish and self-centered. And, to the point where Penelope is more like a, what do you call it, supporting actor in his play. So it's all about him. You've probably known people who are like that. If they're happy, everyone should be happy. And it doesn't matter, whatever it is, the things you're dealing with in your life, they don't even want to hear that. They just want it to be, what they feel is good, what they feel is fun, or what they feel is whatever. And the interesting thing about it is that I think there's a point where he talks about her being his only bestest friend and all of that. And when I thought about it, I said, if these were really real people, he'd be kind of a difficult person to be around, and that's why no one wants to hang out with him. And because of her insecurities, I believe in the first movie, because she was kind of an outcast, because she was, glitchy. And so I kind of remember some of that when I was a kid. There was, I was kind of a misfit at times during the time I was in elementary school, middle school, and inevitably some weird kind of person would gravitate to me. And I think maybe energetically, I think that's one of the things also that I noticed that it kind of touched on, but it's not that really trying to, get you to understand anything about Neo Shamanics or just even life. It's supposed to be entertainment, but actually, like all these movies, it's about programming and supporting a certain type of programming. But it was interesting. They set it up on purpose, obviously, very obvious, showing you that Ralph is selfish and self-centered.
It's like in the beginning, it's always his ideas, like, let's go watch the sunset, let's go to Tappers, let's go to play the Tron game. And she's like, doesn't that game have a glitch? And he's like, yeah, but let's just go,
Yeah, he's one of these guys, one of these folks who, like, it wouldn't be a good idea to go, to, I don't know, some area where it's under construction or something. And you're saying, that place is under construction, it's kind of dangerous. Excuse me. Little purge coming up. Yeah, probably because I'm reflecting back on some experience where you reluctantly, you reluctantly follow this moron, and I have a friend like that who the first time I ever went skiing, which was not something I was really interested in, but because he went skiing and we were supposed to be friends and all this stuff, and we hang out every so often. He wanted to go skiing, and I'd known the guy well over 10 years by that time. And I had another friend who was an avid skier, and he said, okay, it's your first time skiing, and he just ran down these rules that I should know, which, wasn't like really fixed, but it was really, really logical. I didn't know anything about skiing. And he actually supplied me with, some of the gear, and, you need this, you need that, don't just go in a pair of jeans, and, you're going to, need these things because you're going to want them. And so I go with this guy, and actually the guy who was setting me up with the proper gear and everything, he says, stay on the bunny hill. The whole day, stay on the bunny hill, just stay on the bunny hill. And so, I'm on the bunny hill, and the guy I'm going with, the friend I'm going with, he's like, okay, man, it's about time, okay, enough of the bunny hill. I have, good balance. So, I wasn't falling down, but I was getting the feel of it, So let's go to the intermediate. I've just been here like a half hour, man. I don't know if I'm ready. Go, let's go. So he was very much like a Ralph type of character, and I was like the Penelope. So I followed him to the intermediate hill, and okay, I did fine. I should have, that should have been where I stopped. But this guy, selfish Ralph, all he can think about was his fun, and that I'm just the supporting actor in his fun. So we end up going up to the next stage. You take the lift all the way up. Well, I think the intermediate had to take the lift too, but the higher hill, you had to go a bit longer on the lift, and when you get off, you look down, and the ski house looked like a little matchbox from where we were. And I'm like, oh man, why did I let this guy, talk me into doing this? They said, oh, you're fine, you got good balance, you're fine. So he takes off, and also as background, there's certain types of snow, and since there wasn't a whole lot of snowfall, they had that artificial stuff, which I didn't know anything about, which is different from skiing on powder. It's like skiing on that snow cone ice. And they teach you snow plowing, to slow down when you point the skis in, to slow down. That stuff doesn't really work on that type of ice, on that type of snow. So he takes off before me, and I'm like, okay, well, I got to get down there somehow. And I take off behind him. And there's some older guy and his grandkid, going down. And so, I start out, and I'm starting to pick up speed. And I said, I feel like I'm going too fast, snow plowing, so I'm just going even faster. So next thing, I'm like zipping past this guy and his grandkid. And they're going, whoa, and I'm catching up with the friend, I'm not going to mention his name, and I'm in trouble here. My balance is good. I wasn't falling down, but the clubhouse is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm halfway down the hill, and I go, his name is Tom. I can't stop, like that. So all he heard was me, because I was going so fast. He said, I just heard Tom, like that. Oh. And he's like, man, I'm starting to get into this. This is the first time. Look how he's skiing. I said, I'm in fucking trouble, man. So I finally just like, you know what? There's this ski house, and there's like this, I don't know, maybe about 6 meters of ice between the bottom of the hill and the ski house. So which means, hit the ice, I'm just gonna pick up speed, but I'll probably end up dying. So I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna throw myself down. And I threw myself down, and he said the way it looked from his vantage point is that I went down and I exploded. So my gloves went in this direction, that direction, my skis went that direction, and then I was spinning around to a stop. But again, I figured it's a nice little story. But that's the kind of person Ralph was. In other words, my safety had nothing to do, with his fun. And so just, I don't know if any of you know people like that or foolish enough to follow them like I was at that time, but that's the kind of individual that, that I felt Ralph portrayed. So we can. Okay,
yeah, so they get stuck in the glitch, and then they have to wait in a glitch in the Tron game, and they have to wait for someone to come help them get out of there. And then, so it's the routine that is killing Penelope. Like she feels like, I guess she feels like she's gonna die. I mean, I definitely
felt like she was in a rut.
Yeah.
Because she knew, I think she said she knew all the, she knew the course on the, with the sugar something race.
Yeah, Sugar Rush.
Sugar Rush race. So she, she knew all the ins and outs, all the shortcuts. So, it wasn't interesting anymore. She was the best driver. And again, it's about, again, it just basically has to do with the selfishness. We can just move on.
Yeah. Because I remember, Chief, you were saying that boredom is a thing that, yin and yang loves to create for people because it's something that kills consciousness.
Yeah, it creates a certain type of essence. You think fear and jealousy and all these things create a certain type of essence. So does boredom. But you do feel like you're dying after a certain point. And I'm thinking of something else having to do with when my kids were really little. And my son, I don't know, maybe about 6 years old, would pester me sometimes. And, Dad, I'm bored. And I said, well, I'm not. Oh man, I'm bored. I said, well, you know what? Only boring people get bored. And he said, man, that's not cool. And then he had to leave the room. But the thing is that the whole concept of boredom means that there's something mentally restricted in your energy. Because for me, I've never been bored. I've been around boring people, but I would always try to make my way away from those people. Because my imagination was always interesting. I was always thinking about interesting things. And I didn't, deny how far my imagination could go. So there's certain things having to do with how people are raised, or when we got into religion again. It's hard to get away from it. And we've also talked about, or I've actually talked about, the reality is that yin and yang created religion, and yin and yang, was religion, literally. So everything under him followed those types of rules. So even if you're just in regular public school, or you're working at a corporation, or you're working at any type of institution in this world, it's run like a religion. There's a hierarchy, there are rules, there are restrictions. You can only do this much, or you can only do that much. When you get into some really intense religion, you can only think about these things. If you think about these other things, you're a sinner, or you're a heretic, or you're whatever. You're going against the rules of the religion. So you don't even have to go to church or anything, and you start to get programmed into the religion of yin and yang. In other words, what you accept as real, what in other words, what these terms of what's impossible, or even when individuals talk about something's always been some kind of way, that's taught, because nothing has ever always been any kind of way. They even talk about our family has always followed this tradition. Really? So the tradition just kind of popped out of the ether, and next thing you know, this is what your family did. Or somebody a long time ago decided that, I don't know, eating rotting fish is part of what the family is into. Someone made a decision that this is going to be how everyone after them should behave. And is that person this magnificent genius or some concept of a god or whatever? No, it's actually another consciousness creating something, if it's yin and yin, out of his insanity. So you have a family member say, I'm not really into eating that rotten fish, well, there's a tradition, and they get all up in arms about it and so on and so forth. And if you have your wherewithal and your I'd say your mental strength, you will just like, yeah, you can go ahead and eat it yourself, but well, you're out of the family. Thank you. You guys are bored and your breath smells from rotting fish. Thank you, I'm out. But anyway, I think I kind of drifted off since.
Well, no, but, there's some people who get really angry if you don't eat their food being made for you. It's all about control.
Yeah, it is all about control. And it's I call it Children of the Corn syndrome, where, it's one of us. I don't know if that's from that one or Twilight Zone or something.
Sure, because I never watched Little Children.
Yeah, Mrs.A was never into horror movies,
yeah.
And that's to your credit.
Thank you.
But anyway, but you were living a horror movie.
Yeah, that's
so when you talk about what happened in the cult when you decided to move out of the cult, they started coming at you like zombies, and you're a wayward lamb, and she doesn't know what's good for her. And that came up also in the movie where Ralph was deciding what was good for Penelope and what wasn't. What was good for Penelope is what he liked, not what she liked or what she wanted. Okay.
So after the first few scenes, they're sitting in an empty, what looks like either a football field, and they're lying there and just looking up, and she's saying, you know, it almost feels something like you're floating in the universe, and doesn't it make you wonder about your existence?
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about how there are lots of questions with no answers, and
yeah, the movie had that element also. I think one of the last ones we watched had that element as well. Yeah, Contact had that, you know, where there's questions and the viewer is supposed to say, wow, Penelope's deep because she's thinking these questions, but she's not deep enough to actually figure out the answer to the questions. And they do have a lot of movies where they just pose the question, you know, as though we're working on it. You know, keep watching movies, you'll probably get an answer in one of our, you know, future movies, because the movie industry is part of the same system. I don't care if it's another one company or it's Disney's company or, you know, or Paramount or whatever. There is a parameter in which they stay. So if they go outside of that parameter, then, you know, their movie doesn't get supported, or it may not even reach the theaters.
it does feel like they're like baiting you into like, oh, don't you wonder about your existence? The answer is your dreams, you know, whatever they may be. Even if your dreams are, you know, to become a Disney princess or whatever that is.
Yeah, we know that dreams are manipulated by the density anyway. That's one of the little playgrounds. As someone else who's very, very psychic told me some years ago, she said that density never sleeps. So they're constantly tuning you up, even when in your dreams. And then I've taught a number of you about controlling your dreams and how to control your dreams. and influence your own dreams.
Yeah. Thank you. And then the next thing is like she's kind of, you know, telling him, you know, do you wonder about your life and things like that? And Ralph's like, why would I wonder about the life I have when my life is perfect? You know, this concept that a routine is perfect, that knowing what you to expect is perfect, no change is perfect. When, like you said, everything changes.
Everything changes. And it's interesting because it's almost as though, reminds me of the movie Soul, where they're trying to address the fact that whatever's going on in the world, people are wanting to think a little deeper than what they've been told, and how they've been taught or told to think, which means there's also the concept of the unconscious collective unconscious, the collective unconscious. And I think that's like a Jungian term, some psych, or Freudian term or something like that, where whatever you think goes out into the ether, and if you have an idea that you feel is original, it goes out into the ether, and other individuals will pick up on your idea. And, you know, you'll have, and I've had individuals who are certain that that is what happened to some plan they had for a business, and they're talking about this business that they want to start, and if they don't start it immediately, you know, a couple years go by, they're still talking about this business to their intimate friends, but there's some random person starts a business that has the same idea that this person has. Or there's times there's like slang that someone's using in their own little circle, and then some way off on another, you know, part of the country, it starts to be promoted, but you never talk to these people. So they call that collective unconscious, and I call it just the grid. And that the density feeds information into the grid and tells you, you know, what to think. Someone's that's a genius. He figured out how to, you know, put a computer together, create computers and so on. And you wonder, okay, well, what's the foundation of him getting from this point to that point? All that all these things that most individuals think is original isn't really original. It has to do with what controls the system and what kind of information they decide to put into the system.
Do you mind if I take it back to Kim?
Sure.
Okay, so Chief had to let a client go recently that had to, she was always trying to find some kind of loophole to complain about things or trying to undermine in like some kind of weird snaky way. And, you know, Chief promotes that, you know, routines are a dense entity concept and they're not healthy for your consciousness. But she was like, well, what about containment? You have to do that every day. But Chief, with containment, it's about putting your armor on every day because you don't know what kind of change or what kind of situation is going to happen that day in this realm.
Well, but the things I was talking about is just certain routine that the density or the system gives you or they promote. So, you know, I have my jag against the concept of meditation because the way that it's constructed, it is beneficial to density, not to you. So individuals will have a certain time that they sit and meditate and open themselves up. And when you're doing that, as I said before, you have, you know, there's nothing about protecting yourself before you start doing something like that. It's just like sit there and open yourself up to the universe. So what, you know, and there are people who want to defend it, you know, but they can never beat me with the logic. So are you, do you know, have you been out there? Do you know what's out there? I've been out there and I'm out there a lot and I know what's out there. So you know that, you know, you have things around you just waiting for you to open yourself up like that with this routine. Or even in a sense, if it was, let's say, you know, those movies, the government is after you or some assassin is after you and you have a routine. You know, so-and-so walks down this street at this particular time of the day, every or 5 days a week. On the weekend, they have a routine of things that they do, and they may switch it up. 2 weekends, they may do one thing, and then the other 2 weekends, they do this other thing, but they have a routine. And I remember when I was growing up, they were pushing, you must have a routine. You must have a routine for your health, for your mental health. You must have a routine. For your mental health, you should not have a routine. Because what it does lock you into boredom. There's a part of your consciousness that is, I should say, that is acclimated to its origins, which is Supreme Consciousness Universe, which expands in a unique way, and you never repeat the same movement. You may be doing something similar, maybe as we are in the human form, but we're not a regimented program on a clock. We are organic in these illusions. So you may be following a certain order to things, but actually what's going on inside of your physicality is changing due to the energy in the atmosphere changing around you. And because people can't really, you know, see it with these eyes, they don't know that it's changing, but one day they wake up in their routine and they feel different or they feel unwell, but they eat the same thing every day, the same diet every week. And this is why I do everything that the system told me to do. You know, I do my calisthenics, I do my meditation, I do my yoga, you know, every day, so on and so forth. Story about a guy who was doing Tai Chi and he considers himself a Tai Chi master and so on and so forth. But he ends up in the hospital dying of cancer and he couldn't understand it. I did all the things that the system told me to do. My Chi is so good, how come I'm sick? Because he's been bamboozled, he's been fooled by the system into a routine, thinking that this routine was going to also, they play on the fear of transitioning. Again, concept of nothing should change, but things change all the time. You know they change all the time. You know, people, babies, they grow up from babies to adults. That's a change. From adult to, you know, more mature, that's a change. I don't give a darn how many regimented exercises and things you do, how many schedules you keep, and so on and so forth. You can't stop change. But the system tells you in a really subliminal way that you can, even though it's totally illogical to your common sense. Damn the common sense, you gotta have that routine. Or if you have a routine, Ralph is happy to have a routine. Oh, I don't have to think. That's another thing. I want someone to think for me. We run into that with a lot of people who are knee deep in or eyeball deep into religions where they don't know what moves to make next unless the pastor tells them. So there are clients who will ask me, about things before they do it, but that's different. That's me training you to actually feel things out and get familiar with how the currents of energy are flowing around you. And then you get to the point you won't have to ask me of these things, and I won't feel left out or bothered by it because I don't have an ego issue. I don't need people following me to feel good about myself. I feel good about myself because I am who I am. And I'm very unique in the way that I look at things. And my uniqueness works for myself and it works for others. And I don't, say if you have to do this particular exercise and you have to do it, if someone's having trouble with the way that they move their arms, well, move it as well as you can move it within your ability to move it. Or you have to sit there for a half hour and do containment. Do containment as long as you can. I don't have any, I'll say a minimum because some people are lazy, so they won't do their containment. Sometimes I have to make them do it in front of me during their session. So this is not so much a routine. This is to get you used to an exercise that will benefit you. Not so that at a certain time of every day, you got to do this. If you wake up at 8 o'clock one morning, fine, do it at 8:15 or whatever, just do it. No schedule, no hard schedule. But certain individuals, because of the programming, they crave being told, do it this many times. Because I say, well, do it, until you feel okay. But then they get to my, well, this can't be serious. He's not really telling me, do it like that, because that's what they've been raised to believe. It works if someone tells you, you gotta do it like that. So if I'm really, relaxed about it and say, do it until you feel it, they say, they don't take it serious. So I find myself having to go into a structure to get them to actually get the most out of their sessions. So it's still not a routine. It's just like, routine in the sense of how routines are set up. This is to get you used to doing it with a certain type of routine that you crave, and then after that, okay, how's your mind? Can you handle doing it whenever you feel that you need to do it? Then move from the structure, from the rigidity, then you're able to actually start to understand how energy flows, that every day you wake up, the energy is never exactly the same because it moves through the world. So your walls of your house doesn't keep it out because this is a holographic illusion. The real energy passes through everything. So you can lock yourself in a room, that's not going to keep out an emotion because that energy of that emotion goes through everything. Okay?
Thank you. So should I go to the questions or should I continue?
You can go to questions, I think.
Okay. So one of the questions was, is Penelope trying to break her programming by changing games?
Okay.
Or I can go to the next question.
No, that's not a bad one, because actually it talks about what I just talked about. That because of, if she's a real person again, I'll add that, because they're portraying these characters as real people, and you say, I know they're not real people, but does this psyche, this attachment, or this MC that you have, believe that or realize that? It's like little kids watch Power Rangers, and and then they decide they want to be, blue Power Ranger or red or whatever the colors are. I never watched that stuff, but they want to be, one of these Power Rangers, and they're running around, and parents, like, look at that, that's really cute. They're running around, but they're actually being programmed and believing that illusions are real. Yeah.
The question was, is Penelope trying to break her program
Okay.
by changing games?
Yeah, thank you. So Penelope was saying she was a real person that has a consciousness that the origins are from, as everyone's consciousness origins are from Supreme Consciousness Universe, who's about change and growth and expansion and learning and all these really cool things. That would be part of her higher consciousness wanting to break out of a routine that makes her feel like she's not growing or she's not experiencing anymore. So every race is not exactly the same, but it's very close to the same because it's the same track, same people, same attitudes, and so on and so forth. And she's reached her height and her skills to where I guess she's just like the most formidable racer in that game. So her higher consciousness wants to stretch its arms. Like that's what your consciousness is about. That's why you get frustrated at times when you're in a routine, because your consciousness wants to break out of that routine. It wants to do what it's naturally supposed to do. An organic expansion of awareness and anything within a certain parameter of balance. And some will say, well, that's restrictive. No, it isn't restrictive. Because balance doesn't have to go to one extreme and then totally to another extreme. Balance has a lot of room, and you really have to go way out, almost intentionally, to go off the track. So you have enough room to experience anything that will benefit you if you stay within a certain parameter of balance. So balance is not rigid, it flows. And what I know is that my staying within balance, my life has never been boring, unless someone who's rigid and boring comes into it. And I initially start to find ways to get that person out of my space. Because it's like something hard sitting in something that's flowing. So you keep bumping against these things when you want to flow the way you want to flow. You have someone coming and telling you, your ideas are weird. Why do you want to think about these types of things? Don't you want to just, sit with the boys and watch sports on the weekend? Don't you want to just, let's just club. Let's just go clubbing. Everyone has, who is not aware, has their structure, has their walls, what they think is cool, what they think is good, what they think is funny. You're with people who think certain behavior is funny. Certain individual that I knew in the past, living in New York City during the time when they were doing all this construction of a lot of these high-rise, office buildings, and they have these walkways that would rise because they were tearing out the sidewalks under them also. So they have these like plywood walkways, and being a creative guy in his mind, he realizes that, wow, these things are kind of springy. And there's a little old lady toddling on the walkway, maybe about, 4 yards in front of us. And he goes, hey, check this out. And he starts doing a little springing thing, flexing the plywood. And he motions to this old lady, and she's walking on a boat in a ship in rough waters. So she's going like this, and he starts to laugh. I said, man, that's really screwed up. It's, that's funny, man. No, it's not funny. It's rude, man. It's cruel. But he came from an environment where his friends were like that as well. And I hung out with a group of them, and they would do these pranks and on each other, and really cruel. One was like they pretended to be a radio station where a certain radio station, And they call this guy, "You've won $200. Make it down to the radio station within this time, and you'll get your $200." This guy bolts out of his house and runs down to the radio station. He said, "I'm here. I won. I won the contest." They said, "What are you talking about? We have a contest going on." And they're like, in the vicinity, and they're laughing their asses off. And he goes, "Hey, funny, right? Funny." I said, "Man, that's really screwed up." So again, talking about people's perceptions and the boxes they're in, and whatever their acclimation, however they grew up, or wherever they grew up, this kind of weird sense of humor which I don't consider to be humor, just cruelty, was considered funny. But was that a question for that? Other than her, Penelope wanting to expand her horizons, because if she was a real person again, her higher consciousness, whatever's awake in it, wants to expand. And that's all she wanted, was something more interesting, more expansive. She wanted to learn something new. She wanted to experience something new. And one of the things also, I think, I don't know if I'm getting ahead, where Ralph wanted her to think that whatever it is that she wanted to do was dangerous. Why change? It's dangerous. And I'm quite sure there are a number of you who have family members or friends who will tell you that moving out of the country, that's dangerous.
You're going to give up on the American dream? Yeah,
when I left and my first trip to Thailand was sometime after the tsunami in the mid, 2000, maybe 2005 or 2006, I forgot exactly, when that tsunami came through after the earthquake out in the ocean. And all these people died in the southern part of Thailand. And so, I wanted change. I needed to get out of the routine or the rut, because my business wasn't really routine, except that, I did work for different clients, but it was always a different project. Things were kind of interesting. What I kind of got bored with was that I was always just really, really working really hard to execute someone else's ideas. So I said, I need a break. I've been busting my hump for over a decade and a half, just busting my hump and so on. And I really wanted to take a trip by myself. And so I, decided, my older sister told me about, her trip to Thailand. I said, okay, sounds pretty cool. So I'm making my plans, and I'm telling the spouse I'm going to go on a trip, and I think I'm going to go to Thailand. And don't try to, tell me where I should or shouldn't go. But of course, she didn't like me going to Thailand. Oh, there's a sex trade there. The guys are, as soon as they go there, they're going to try to get laid or whatever. So freaking what? Anyway, I'm making these plans, and she's like, he's really serious about it. I got the tickets and so on. And then she starts in, I hear it's very dangerous there. They had a tsunami there. I said, well, I'm not going to be anywhere near Phuket or any of the islands. I'm starting in Bangkok, which is near, near the water, but I'm going north. So besides, how often is there going to be a tsunami? This tsunami, I don't even remember when the one previous tsunami went through there, but anything, just pulling anything out of their hat to try to keep you from moving forward. But in reality, it's like with Wreck-It Ralph, he was feeding on Penelope. It was his food. So in a subconscious way, he didn't want his food to get away. She was the only one who was willing to hang out with him. So he tried to make all kinds of excuses why she shouldn't want to expand. Oh, you want a new track? I'll make you a new track. So he makes some janky ass track, just digging around and so on and so forth. And because he did it, he ended up, breaking the machine, because this little kid who's playing the game is not behaving right. So I'm gonna really wrench this the steering wheel till I left. And I don't know what size this kid was, but she must have some serious muscles.
She didn't.
Anyway, so this little girl wrenches, and breaks the steering wheel off. So
that's interesting, Chief. It reminds me of what you were teaching us about how density, sometimes they'll try their hardest to lock you into boredom, lock you into routine.
Mm-hmm.
But though they try so hard, sometimes density, because density is not brilliant.
Yeah, they don't side with one person really, So again, I've said this before. Anyone thinks they come from a group that's like, well, we're the chosen people and shit. Look inside that group and see all the problems that group's having. They don't like you. They don't like anybody. You're just a tool and you're just food. But they'll pitch you against another one to make you feel like you're important. And this is even in groups of popular kids and so on and so forth. But get in there, get a little insight in there. So-and-so's got an eating disorder, or so-and-so's actually kind of like a little drug addict, and so-and-so, let's keep this, because we want this illusion that we are the special people, or are the popular kids,
Right. And then
or we're the jocks, Yeah.
And then people get paid off to, let's not talk about the issues in between this ethnicity and that ethnicity,
Or this group or that group.
Yeah.
Because they want to keep this illusion going, because those who believe in it look up to them and don't know that they're falling apart, that they're just a mess. So when I got a chance to be around individuals who had a whole lot of money in the States when I was in my 20s, I was like, how in the hell can they even keep this afloat with their personalities, and they're just totally a mess. Every one of them. Not the same mess, but their own brand of mess. So it's like, look, we're going to put this illusion out there, and you keep this illusion up regardless. Because if they know that you're just a basket case like everyone else, they won't think you're so special.
I was just talking about how you had taught us about how density is not so brilliant. So he's trying his hardest to lock Penelope down by making this janky track, and then in the end, he facilitates her escape.
Yeah.
Which is how density sometimes shoots themselves in the foot when consciousness really want to get away from the routine, get away from this lockdown situation. Sometimes that ends up manifesting.
Well, how he feeds on it is okay. Richard Ralph is crushing her, and she's feeling guilty because you're going to hurt my feelings, and there's a lot of parents with that nonsense. You're going to hurt my feelings if you leave town, and I won't be able to see you every weekend. And so the person who wants to expand, they feel this stress. They feel like they owe this person something for some weird reason. And a lot of parents will do this. I birthed you out. I went 7 hours of labor, and then you just, damn, mom, I'm 30 fucking years old.
I didn't ask to be born.
I want to get out. I want my own life. Yeah, I didn't ask to be born, was the other one. But I didn't have any choice in this game, the yin and yin game. You don't have any choice. They just pop you in there, and they choose who you're going to be and who you're going to be with. So then, with Rick Ralph, he causes her, the machine to get broken, and like Mrs.A said, then all of a sudden, they have to leave, which stresses the heck out of him. So the system gets to feed on both of them. So they're not really supporting Rick and Ralph, they're just supporting any way of feeding. So then he's on this journey, and I'm doing these things for you, Penelope. It's for you, Penelope. No, it's for him. We're gonna find that steering wheel for your game. And then, they obviously have him saying it. This you won't leave me. So.
Yeah, I guess I should go to the next question.
No, we don't have cues here, as you know. We kind of fly free here. So.
Yeah, we don't have anything set previously. So.
Yeah, this is very organic, like Supreme Consciousness Universe.
Very live. Okay, in this prison, do they monitor all our online activities so that they can program us further and load us with more attachments?
Can you read that again?
Okay, yes. In this prison, do they monitor all our online activities so that they can program us further and load us with more attachments?
Yeah, that's, I wouldn't say that's common knowledge, because I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, I should know this already, but yes.
I have some things that we've researched.
Okay, if there's because they have a part 2 to what she's talking
Well,
about.
we do have those with crashes.
Well, you can say louder.
Do you think it's okay to talk about that?
What with our crashes?
The AIM article? Or should we
Oh yeah,
talk about something?
Well, since it is about the internet, and as I was talking about, we were doing some research on crashes on the internet, and they do have a record, of course. They have a lot of records on of certain things that they don't feel that you can use to escape, the system. So they had a list of crashes and how long they lasted, excuse me, how many people were affected and so on.
Yes, all the times, like the most famous internet crashes and how many people were affected. So it depended on, like Chief said, and what this question is addressing is about how density is monitoring your essence output when you're watching certain things. Like, for example, if your Gmail account crashes or something, you feel anxious, or you feel like, oh no, I don't know what's coming, or you're like you're on eBay and suddenly your bid is canceled, and then you really want this thing, you give out essence. So, for example, in August 1996, there was in 6.3 million clients were affected by the AOL service was down for 19 hours. So you see that this is the effect. And it's kind of interesting because the symbol for AOL is very Illuminati kind of thing, triangles with the eye looking thing in the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the next one was on eBay in 1999 was, let's see, they were able, this crash was here, it says at the world's greatest online auction webpage, and the service was down for a whole day. An incident which is allegedly considered the greatest outage in online history at the time. And they talk about the money being lost, like, oh no, eBay lost expected $3 to $5 million, but eBay never disappeared. So it was never about the money, it was always about the essence.
Yeah. And it was like a programmed crash. And again, even if you said eBay was down for an hour, someone would say, well, that's not long. But it was enough to get a lot of essence out of the people who were bidding on things that they wanted or that they thought they needed. The same with the first crash. It was literally an essence gathering operation. And I didn't really have anyone really challenge me on this, that the density is into essence as a commodity. That's what's important to them. As you are into certain things to prolong your so-called life in this realm. If it has to do with food, and you need food for this particular game for you to continue walking around in this nonsense, then that's what's going to be important. But again, you need to have in this game capital. You need money in order to buy the food, unless you're somewhere that the system hasn't shown up. Well, I shouldn't say the system is all over the place, that their stormtroopers haven't shown up and restrict you from feeding from nature. Fishing where you want to fish and so on, or gathering foods from nature. So in order to lock you down, they restrict that. Or the whole concept of land taxes, that you can't be on a piece of land that you, I don't know if they claim, people claim parts of Gaia, of course, but this, all of this is supposedly yours, illusion still, but there hasn't been that type of deal in a long, long time where your average person can have a certain environment in which they can sustain themselves by themselves, or a certain community can sustain themselves just by eating off of the land, or if they into hunting on the land. Certain groups were about territory, but not so much borders, and that's how they would survive. So the system locks it down so that you have to go through their machine in order to do anything. And so since the time I was a kid, I could see them locking things down one after the next, after the next, after the next, after the next, till you have a younger group of people coming in and they think that that's all there's always been this way. And this is the way things are. And some older person starts telling me, like my father, for instance, father unit, was telling me when I lived upstate, and that's considered rural where I was living, But he said, this isn't the country. I said, what do you mean this isn't the country? It's got trees, it's got, all this nature and so on and so forth. He said, I can see the next house.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, what the hell? But I knew where he was living, and I understood what he was talking about, that there was, there weren't people crowded into certain places, into certain spaces. He was of a generation that where, you're on the road, you can pull off the road into, a little area, and they didn't have, rest stops and things like that. And if you have to sleep, you just pull off, and kind of like conceal yourself off the road. And, then you sleep, and then you get up, and then you move on. And there wasn't any cops coming in and said, hey, what are you doing sleeping over here? This is against the rule, law to sleep here, whatever. All these rules and so on. One of my favorites has to do with what happened with air travel. So when I started, and the son said, you're really dating yourself. But yeah, during the time that was happening, yeah, I was quite a young person in this realm. And you could just, get your ticket, you wait for the plane to pull into the, and then you just walk onto the plane after, you give your ticket. And your family could just hang out there at the gate right at where you walk into the, onto the plane. And then even see you walking, across that little, walkway thing, enclosed walkway, and wave at you while you're getting onto the plane. So they started to plan these ways of shutting that down with hijackings. We had to stop this hijacking stuff that never quite made any sense to me. They would literally do some programming with certain people, or the government that wants to start shutting things down would pay certain groups to play these roles as hijackers, and then the people would actually brainwash literally a certain followings to go along and do these things, or brainwash a certain following of individuals who believed that they would, they weren't all, also there were different groups who were doing it. It wasn't always Muslims. So, but when they decide that they want to target a certain group, then all of a sudden, the news comes out, it's Muslims who are, and the bomber believes that if he sacrifices himself, he'll go to a nirvana where there are 100 virgins. So again, all these things are planned by the system. So they started to restrict how, and made it difficult for you to get onto planes. You had to go through all these routines and, excuse me, welcome! Sorry, that's my little war call there. Because we got a few little idiots outside trying to make it.
They were throwing bread at our door the other day.
Yeah.
During session.
Yeah, that's about the amount of what you can do. But anyway, so it started to just escalate from that to this nonsense where X-rays and also they have they didn't have that metal detector thing in the beginning as well. So this is all planned by a structure, by a system. And it's to make things difficult, and they find that the more stress, the more essence. So you go in, you got to take your shoes off, you got to do this stuff, and then they will randomly pull you to the side. Or if there's someone who decide these are the victims or the targets of this particular time, then there's stress builds in that whole group. So if you can see the type of energy I see coming off of people, you'll see just a certain type of energy start to pulse out of certain people who are targeted as a certain group to be targeted. So anyway, I don't know if I got far from what we were talking about.
The last one of,
yeah, we're going back to, the crashes and the amount of essence they got from planned crashes.
So the other examples were along the same lines, where Google, for example, in August 2008, were billions affected. So Google's obviously still around, and they got tons and tons of essence. So, but there's another example of why you will see some of these businesses crash. And some, like for example, 7 days of downtime for MSN Messenger in July 2001. And this instant messenger is dead. They said, rest in peace, instant messaging of the world's biggest software organization. And their service were down for a few clients for no less than 7 days. But during that, a lot of those who had this instant messaging, they went to other instant messengers. And this messaging, MSN Messenger, additionally, went down in 2003 and 2005. And so Chief was saying that your most valuable asset, the most valuable thing that you have is your energy. It's not your money, because these companies go down sometimes because they're stealing essence from other density. And this company is an example of that. You can see pop stars. Sometimes they start trying to steal essence from other pop stars or any kind of other kind of famous people, and then they end up getting tanked all of a sudden. Suddenly they are just not popular, or everyone is attacking them.
Well, I think, do you feel like it fits in there?
I do, but.
Well, okay, we can go ahead and just, just throw it out there and see what happens.
Okay. So one time we were talking about where there was a certain comedian. She's not normally a comedian, but she already has made her fame in movies and lots of other things. And she talked about selling her soul in the way that she was like very poor, in a poor situation, in like a rat infested or, just an infested area. And then
yeah, I think the setup for this particular individual is that they started out where her lover, I guess she was in her early 20s, and her lover was killed in an automobile accident, which started her, kind of like fall into a depression. And somehow, I don't know exactly, because she didn't really talk about why she wasn't living with family or anything like that, but she ends up renting a space in a basement. And she just had this mattress, she said flea-ridden mattress in a basement to sleep on. And she decided that she's going to write a letter to God, that I'll do anything to change this situation and to get out of this situation. So she was, she was trying to be a comedian, and she was kind of, I saw her stuff years ago, and I thought she was pretty funny, But anyway, the story is kind of interesting because she said a week later, from being sleeping on a flea-ridden mattress, I think about a week later, she ends up on the Tonight Show. And then from there, she just soared into, this popularity and so on. And that's literally the beginnings of it.
Yes, and then like during one of her more recent comedy.
She did a show.
She did a show, and at the beginning of the show, it was really interesting because like Chief talks about essence being something that is the most valuable thing for density. And whenever the crowd was like cheering for her, she's like, "Ooh, yes, give me that. That's some good energy." And she was like, had her hands out like that. I was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, literally, that's what she
literally feeding. I was like, "That's really interesting." And like she, was trying to either add something else to her show or to herself, and then or like reinvent herself again. But like eventually, we muscle tested, Chief muscle tested, and got that the density that's behind her was stealing essence from other density. And so now there's like this attack, and like all these people attacking her with rest in peace, like as if she's already dead, and she's not dead yet, but like they're just saying that, like they're giving obituaries and everything, and that's because density is attacking her for stealing.
Well, part of that stealing had to do with this Corona thing, and it shut down a lot of traffic to places where where in other words people would go to these places and feed their essence, and this Corona pandemic thing prevented that. And so also because of what's going on with the shift of energy on the planet, the amount of essence that a density can get from its food is going down. The higher the vibration on the planet goes, the less viable to density food that they can actually consume. So even those that they were consuming, getting ample amounts of essence from, are no longer able to generate that same level of essence. So what has been going on for a while is that density is not in lockstep with one another. They fight with each other all the time, and I've said that in the past. They do fight with each other. They fight over territories. They set up games like, you know, when someone goes to the track and bets on a horse. You know, they're betting against all the other horses. They do this when it comes to warfare. They set up, you know, this side against that side, and then they bet on how much essence is going to come from those battles. So what happens is during this last couple of years, there's been this rating other density of their essence. And, you know, you can see that in sort of these stories just with people, you know, going in and stealing crops from another, you know, farm or something like that, or some, you know, they call, you know, rogue individuals, you know, in the cover of darkness, they go in and they steal livestock and so on. This has been going on for a really long time since the Indian, approach to this planet. So the same thing having to do with density, they will steal from one another when things start to get slim. Or they'll gang up at times, and then they will attack another group of density to override them, overrun them, and take over their area, their territory. So this is a game when you sell your soul. This is part of what you're part of. You're part of the things that are going on the other side. But they guarantee you fame and money and so on and so forth, in trade of you going out and either being a distraction for people so that they don't try to think more expansively. They get locked into a routine, locked into, they do this thing on the planet where, what's your favorite this, what's your favorite that? In other words, even when I was a little kid in elementary school, we never had that in the house. So when I was going to school, and particularly certain schools in rural areas, there's this, what's your favorite color? Who's your favorite actor? What's your favorite song? And that's all to pull you into a box. So they say, what's your favorite song? I don't really have a favorite song. I like songs, some good, some are bad, but I don't have a favorite. What's wrong with you? You should have a favorite. And it's literally bullying you into a box. You have to find a box. So what happened with her was that, as Mrs.A was saying, this raid that was going on from her side caught up with them. And she was literally, and I think that's why she went and did this show, because there was her manager was saying, your stuff is like 30 years old, man. Just stick with the show that you're doing. That's good essence. But during the Corona business, they weren't having studio shows where the audience comes in and gets fed on. There's like this guy Trevor Noah who does the Daily Show, and I remember watching the Daily Show like 10 some years ago or more, and the previous host, there's an in-studio audience, and they feed off the audience and so on and so forth. But because of the Corona thing, people were social distancing and so on as an excuse to keep people from gathering in certain places. Not exactly sure why, again, because that's how they get essence, to get groups of people together and then motivate them in a certain way. So if you get a certain performer and he can move that audience, and all that audience starts to react, and you've seen these types of shows where the whole audience starts to react a certain way, and they start to conjure up this essence that is fed through the performer and then to those he's working for.
Chief, I have a great picture of that. Would you like to see? It's from
Sure.
Wreck-It Ralph. So I'll show everybody.
Okay, so on the Wreck-It Ralph movie, there's this picture of Ralph's YouTube or BuzzTube, excuse me, BuzzTube video, and these little characters who are all blue are just sucking up all the hearts. the hearts are the essence. And that's what density values. It has nothing to do with the numbers. That's like fine and dandy, but the essence, the hearts is what they're really after.
Yeah, they're after the energy. So a lot of individuals so locked down into this realm, they think it's all about money. It's money to those who are locked down in this realm, but to those who control the realm, it's about essence. It's about energy. And if you're paying attention to what I'm saying and what we're saying, everything we're talking about, especially when it comes to performers, and when she got up and she did do that, she's like, oh, such good energy. It's almost like she's going like that, breathing it in.
Like he's so hungry.
Like a little monster just breathing and sucking it in, and she puts her hands like, yes.
Yeah, I was like, oh gosh.
It's like like one of those sci-fi films where someone, and they have them, like these horror films or whatever. Someone it's absorbing someone's life essence. You've seen those, and then they show it as sparkles coming out of a person like that, because that's real. That's real.
It scares some people.
Yeah, and this person, she wasn't doing a sci-fi. This is her. What does a comedy show have to do with breathing in people's essence? A lot of performers who got really hooked on performing because they were getting this essence from their crowd. And then when it's over, they just have the hardest time. A good number of them, you can probably find it, Googling on whatever, the number of people who crash and burn once they fall out of popularity.
And then they're insane because they're like has-beens.
Yeah, I think that was that Fabio guy or something. There was a story about this guy. It was back in the 90s, I think he was popular, and they had him in commercials. And it's just kind of came out of the blue, it seemed like. And he was this guy, he looked like he was Eastern European with dark hair and long hair. And he was like, and he had like, pecs and things like that.
But is it what's that, about the butter? Isn't it,
Yeah, but he's on number. It might have been the butter thing. That might have been his claim to fame. Because there was also this black dude that was doing Old Spice.
yeah.
Which was pretty funny. I enjoyed it as entertainment because I never used, when I was a kid, you get Old Spice from old people, and it all smelled kind of funny, But I think it still exists, So whatever their corkscrewing is, it still keeps it going. I never thought it was that great a fragrance. Like Old Spice and some other of those types of fragrances.
I can't believe it's not butter.
Okay, so he was I can't believe it's not butter. So what does this, buff, guy with flowing hair have to do with butter? But he looked good to women, and so they were just like, oh, But that was his claim to fame, and it kind of, after a while, as things go, people were like, okay, been there, done that. And also over time, he gets older, and, they like young and fresh. So he literally kind of went nuts. And it talked about it was like a board meeting where he shows up, I guess to pitch something he wanted to do. And he had these implants to make it look like he still had, pets and so on and so forth. And they said he looked like a freak show. And he had like the fake tan stuff, or just went to the tanning salon. He just looked like he was just overdone and just really weird. Like trying to prevent himself from falling apart. I don't know what his personality was. So let's do some extra exercises, like from Dwayne or the Rock Johnson or some other guys. You really have to work hard when you get older to keep those those pecs. So he was falling apart. And he decided to take shortcuts, and he didn't even realize how monstrous he looked. To the point where they said when he came in, they said it was really hard to look at him. And there was no way they were going to use him for anything. But to him, it's like the pigeons are telling him, you're still the shit, man. You're still it. You're still it. It's because he got a certain amount of essence from the people who saw him on the street, the women who were sexually aroused by him, and so on. And then when that faded, he wasn't getting essence anymore. And he was believing that this was going to go on forever. And they do that a lot with people who who become famous, sometimes overnight. This guy, MC Hammer, he was really, 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 really hot, and everyone was telling him around him that you're going to be like Michael Jackson, and you're just going to have staying power. You're just going to, And you know what happened to him? And he just really, he was spending money crazy, he wasn't saving his money, get all this crew. So he's divvying all this money up to this image of his posse. And then when the money started, disappearing, the posse had to disappear. They had to support themselves and so on. And next thing, last thing was some 10 years plus ago that he was preaching or something. He started a church and was preaching, which apparently wasn't bringing the same kind of money in that he was getting when he was doing Hammer Time and all of these other songs. So again, it's all about essence for density. And they play their food in order to get it. They will offer you a contract for things, but they also feel they have a right to rescind it. I think I have that movie Bedazzled. It's kind of goofy,
Oh, yeah,
but it
it's
talks
really
about
good.
the devil.
Super good.
It talks about making deals with the devil. And it's actually really good in the sense of that's what's really going on. What's the guy's name who plays it? Brendan Fraser. This one with Brendan Fraser. There's one out of England that was made back in the 60s. But Brendan Fraser, I think, was back in the 90s or something that this remake was. And I like the remake. Well, the first one was funny too. But the remake is really, really funny because Brendan Fraser, he's kind of an interesting looking guy. And he does comedy pretty well. But it has to do with the devil just offering him, it had to do with the girlfriend. I probably talked about this before, but whatever. He wants this girl that he's fixated on because he's kind of this nerdy guy. He's awkward socially and so on and so forth. And the devil said, I'm going to make you popular. And the thing he was interested in was this woman. What he was interested in was this woman. I'll get you this woman. But every time he ended up in a situation where he's with, where this woman's with him, she either hates him or there's something wrong with his anatomy, or there's, he's gay all of a sudden, or, something that was going to actually keep that situation from actually working the way that he wanted to work. And that's literally, and they just, they make fun of the populace when they do these kind of moves because they're telling you what they do. So.
Maybe someday we'll review that.
Yeah, I think we might review that one. There's a couple other ones that are starting to come up that I think that might be good to review as well. But not at the top of my head right now, but there's some others that were kind of like I was passing over and then kind of said, I should maybe include that one. And but this is one I think we might end up doing a review on.
The next question is, should we avoid the internet as much as possible?
It depends on the person. There's a certain family member of mine who is very, very sensitive, and she gets affected by the energy from the internet. And I have probably mentioned that a story having to do with me having a modem, a wireless modem in a certain location in the house. And she came to stay with me with me and the family for a while. And she had, it was like an extra guest bedroom, and she was sleeping in there. And because no one's in there, I just had the modem in there. And she was being affected by the modem. And she's, she doesn't like to make waves or anything. So she's kind of like, timidly telling me that, having some effects from the modem. And I said, well, I said, what's the effects? And she shows me her feet. And this is similar to the thing that energetic thing that happened in Miss A's hands before she started. It was kind of like spiking at times, where her hands would dry up and crack. And this was going on with her feet. It was really, really, really serious. And her feet were drying and cracking. And she said, "It's the modem." I said, "Okay, I'll move the modem out of the room," and I put it in another location in the house. And after that, the cracking stopped and her feet came back to normal. So there is an energy, and she's the one that actually, there were some those on the other side who told her that the energy of the internet is enslaved energy. So So it means that it's controlled by density in there, which it is. So depending on, well, when you talk about whether you spend less time on the internet, what do I tell you? Contain it. It will give you a little bit more time, but it's a relentless type of energy. Some can handle that type of vibration, but it does affect you on a certain level because they're affecting your essence and your mind through your essence as well. But if you contain and you're aware, you actually can knock a lot of that down, a lot of that out. But I wouldn't spend like endless hours on it. I would take breaks. That's what I would say.
Could I share some stuff about it?
Sure.
So, for example, Chief, he's his first class, so he's way more clear than I am, and I have holes in my energy in certain things. So certain things affect me more than other things. Like, for example, if I saw a video of like a really strange deep sea creature that was very ugly or looking, it would make me feel a certain way versus other things. So if you know you have a propensity to puff out essence when you see certain visuals and you're going to watch a video about that, be sure to contain yourself and contain, whatever you're looking at. So for example, if I look at a YouTube video, I not only contain who made the video, I contain what the video is about. I contain those who are behind the video, because density is behind certain videos. Like, for example, there's this one video we were watching and they would just randomly throw up pictures of like vampires or witches or different things like that. And people think, oh, haha, funny, but it's actually tapping into density that represents witches, density that represents vampires. All these things are trying to feed on you during this video. So you're containing all those things. Like, for example, if it's like top 10, whatever, I contain 10 times. I contain the video, I contain who made the video, and I contain the density behind that. And so whenever I do that, I usually feel okay after I watch the video. But like Chief says, it's good to take some breaks.
Actually, one of the things when you were talking about that, it kind of takes me to something I really wasn't really planning to talk about, having to do with loops in everyone's energy. You have historical loops of your time here, and we're just going to talk about your time in this particular. I think we got a nice little rain going on outside. But in other words, anything that's traumatic creates a loop. Anything that's where you feel like, wow, this, I never thought that I'd ever win anything, and it creates a loop as well. And the negative loops of the trauma can be triggered by just someone saying a word that reminds you of that particular period, or as Mrs.A was talking about, pictures of vampires and things being flashed on the screen can be a trigger for certain people who watch horror movies, and it causes them to be frightened. So what happens? You watch it, it triggers you, and then the door is open. And voila, you're buffet. So that's one of the things, and there'll be a point where I'll probably get into more detail about these loops and how deeper in how they work and so on and so forth. But that reminded me of the loops that everyone has, and key moments in your expressions where something traumatic happened, something horrific happened, or even something that was just like, I won, $1 million. Oh, I always thought that I was a loser, but this proves I'm not a loser. And so you come back to that time frame over and over again when your consciousness, it fragments you. So the larger part of your consciousness that keeps you going is moving on and experiencing other things, but there's this part of your consciousness that is stuck back in this time where you didn't know that much, where there are other things going on that are really, really awful, even during the time when you won this, all this money. So anyway, I'll leave it there and we just move on to the next question.
Okay. Should I say a little something or just move on?
You go ahead if you have something to add to it. No problem.
Well, when she was talking about certain words being triggering, like, for example, expectations or blame or guilt or torture, things like that would trigger me because I just hated the word torture. Like even if someone said the word torture, it made me feel like shocked. And I was like thinking, you know, that's weird. Why does that happen to me? And when Chief is saying it's because you have a loop of this torture in your energy. And I was like, and as those who have sessions, as those get pulled out, it's less and less triggering, less and less triggering. Now when someone says the word torture, I don't feel anything.
Mhm.
So I'll keep going.
Okay.
Okay, so we just continue where we left off, and there is
Go ahead.
so Wreck-It Ralph talks to Vanellope, and he says, you know, for 27 years I was a 0, and then I got a best friend. So that's like his little loop.
Yeah, that was a loop. Yeah.
Yeah, so he wants to keep her in this loop of you're my best friend, you're my best friend. And, you know, like, put that weight on her. All the 27 years of my trauma, I'm putting it on you.
Yeah, so he doesn't, you know, he doesn't really want to grow from that time, from where he felt, you know, all of a sudden that he wasn't a bad guy, and that there was actually somebody who didn't mind being around him. And so to move forward would be a fear that he would fall backwards into the time where he didn't have, you know, a friend, and when he was considered a bad guy, nobody liked him. But he wanted her as a fetish to be the symbol, that, you know, the live symbol, to hold that memory, to hold that loop in place, which it has to do with his selfishness. It's all about him. You know, you can't leave. You know, if you leave, then all of a sudden my, this moment where I felt good for the first time, you know, it could possibly fade. It's like a fear of change in general, that it could possibly fade. A lot of people have a fear of change because they've been programmed to believe that if you step out that door, you could possibly go backwards. Which, you know, I don't know. I mean, I've never stepped out of the door from something and went backwards, because I have the knowledge of what it is to be back there. So I'm not going to do the same thing that I did that caused a problem, you know, 5 years before or anything like that, unless you're just so freaking programmed and dense. So your natural inclination, the natural inclination of your consciousness, is to grow and to move forward. But the system, that's you know, why the system is such a real bear. It just keeps telling you, you know, the opposite. It'll tell you to explore, but tell you to stay put at the same time. So the explore is like, we're progressive, explore, but if you do it, you die. You know, or kids, you know, playing with the sticks or whatever. You could put somebody's eye out with that or whatever, you know. And so they keep, you know, the parents keep harassing, or usually the mother keep harassing the kid. Put those sticks down. When that kid could have been someone who decides and figures out how to create something interesting with those sticks because he's playing around with these sticks. You know, if you kind of like hit yourself in the eye with a stick, you're not going to do it again. You're going to say, okay, that's a little close. And very seldom does a kid, you know, put his eye out. And again, accidents are the construct of density. I don't believe in accidents being accidents anymore.
And you got hit in the eye.
Yeah, the time when I was a kid, I guess it was about 9 or something like 10 or whatever. And it was so set up, so well set up, that there was no way I was going to avoid getting hit in the eye with this stick. So walking from school, living in Detroit at the time, and I got these 2 buddies who were walking home from school, and one of them picks up a stick, and obviously something was possessed his butt, and he whacks the stop sign at the corner with the stick. The other friend sees it happen. I'm walking this way, and he calls me. He's behind me, and he calls me, and then I turn around and bam, right in the eye. And my parents thought that I was going to lose that eye. You know, that's how bad it was. But it was a setup. If the other kid had not said anything, I just got hit in the back of the head, then you know, a knot would have healed, but my eye was affected by that accident, which again was a loop. And and you get rid of those loops. I get rid of the loops. I find that no one else seems to be able to get rid of the loops. But we'll talk on separate sessions, and we'll work on loops for those who are interested in getting rid of those loops. But that's a setup. That was not an accident. That was set up. It was so well placed. Like someone drew out a diagram. And the kid who called me, he wasn't trying to get, he thought, that, oh my God, you're gonna get hit in the back of the head. But he kind of panics and just calls me. He would have been better off just pushing me, and pushing me down. I would have recovered from that. Well, I did recover from it, but again, it did affect the eye and the vision in the eye. Not that bad actually, but it was not, the sight was not as good in that eye as the other, but it wasn't so extreme, like there was blindness or anything. I could still see. It's just that, there was just a little more blurry. And I remember looking at that when my eye was healing, looking in the mirror, and it was like the eye had ridges, like even ridges on the eyeball. It was the weirdest thing. But anyway.
That's really interesting, Chief, because that's why this realm, this matrix, this holographic realm, it sucks, because they can even use your good intentions. Like this kid's trying to help Chief, like, don't, it's gonna hit you, and he didn't mean anything, but Density's like, fear. And so he's like, Chief's, when
yeah, and I was the kind of kid who wasn't into blaming people for anything. Someone said, if you had to go, I said, well, man, he just was trying to help. Was it that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions? But yeah, it was literally, like that. So I knew it scarred him also. So he got a loop as well from that. The kid who broke the stick across the pole and then, in the end hit me in the eye, he got a loop. Because he wasn't a evil kid. I didn't hang out with evil kids. But kids are goofy. He was just being another goofy kid. So I never blamed any of them to this day. I never blamed any of them for it. I just said that was freaking weird. That was the only thing that went through my head for years. But then as I got more and more aware through my own research and everything, I realized it was set up. And it has to do with how your energy flows. The higher energy flows, when you're coming along and you find that you're getting dumped on all the time, it has to do with the amount of energy you have and the fact that you have so much energy, they can feed freely on it. So they're always doing stuff, always targeting you in certain ways, always, it just seems like it goes on all the time. When I was a kid, it felt like there was something going on almost every day that was disappointing me, or I felt like I was being besieged upon. So that had to do with my energy levels. So anyway,
Thank you. So for example, Ralph, he treats Vanellope like she's his fetish for happiness or something.
Yeah,
his charm of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And when that's why he's freaking out, thinking that his fetish is going to get away.
Yeah, we did. I did talk about fetishes in other forums and how that works. Lucky rabbit's feet and my lucky dollar or my lucky shirt or whatever. And if you lose it, all of a sudden it feels like their world is coming to an end because they've invested so much of their energy into this item. And people can be a fetish for some others. So for some, a lot of the time, you really look at it and you're in a relationship with someone and they're feeding on you, you just feel that they're sucking your essence out of you. And after a while, you start to get, short-tempered with the person and frustrated, even when you're alone, because you're having so much of your essence pulled, sucked out of you. It's like, my little arrow is pointing towards this person as an issue. I got to get away from this person. And they try to get away, and some of these individuals are insane. So women who can't get away from a crazy boyfriend or a violent husband, guys who get stalked by an ex-girlfriend, or whatever, who's very, very clingy, and in other words, you're trying to free yourself, but they're running after you like they're going to die if you're not in their lives, and illogically too, because they're coming after you and they're not even thinking, that the way that they're coming after you makes you want to deal with them even less. And it's just like spirals out of shape. And then very much, that person who does that is literally possessed by the density that wants more essence. Because they're getting essence from the terror of the person who's being chased. Or women who have to go to these shelters for battered women, where the spouse, of the husband is not supposed to know the location, but they're always afraid that they might walk out on the street and run into them by accident. We have some of that going on in among some of the clients here, that there are certain individuals that are just so background crazy that you don't want to have anything to do with them, but there's this fear that you're going to run into this person because you haven't moved from this location and you don't know if that person's still living in the same area, in the same city.
So some people try to make you into a secret fetish.
Yeah, this I'll call what considered secret fetishes. That can be people who are in entertainment. That could be someone who is influential in some ways. Someone who, and there have been people who try to use me as a secret fetish. And I go through means of letting them know that they're focusing on me in a very intrusive way. So it happens to anyone that someone perceives as influential, or again, just individuals who are in the limelight in some way, shape, or form, where some of them, they have the picture of the person, and some make altars to these people. And there's another form of turning someone into a secret fetish. So someone who's in show business, that's why protection is key, because you have no idea who's focusing on you.
And sometimes people, of course, whenever they have sessions with you, their lives get better, or their abilities to protect themselves, of course, get better. And then whenever people are like, so why is your life suddenly getting so much better? And they're like, they don't want to give you credit because you're their secret fetish.
Oh yeah, that's another version. Also, they want to keep someone a secret. It's hard to keep someone who's a pop star and who's in out in the limelight a secret. But there are those who have tried to keep me a secret. To the extent where it's like, look, we're in this realm. Resources help. So I am not about to do jack shit for free because it's illogical. No one does it for free. People who want to keep me as a secret fetish won't do things for free. But because they're having a selfish moment, I'm expanding, and some have actually gone to the extent, not any of these who are present at this moment, of lying about what I can do, or trying to minimize what I can do when I change their lives dramatically. But the problem with someone targeting me that way, I have associates. And if associates know what you're doing, what I give you can be taken away. And I have to design it that way, or else I'm a sucker. So you give things away for free, they have no respect. You're a sucker. If you're really nice, you're a sucker. So a great lesson for me is when I first moved to New York City. And I was a little too polite. But it didn't take me long to figure it out. I'm a quick learner. And people are jostling and pushing you out of line to get, and they're trying to get something, and and you're just being polite. That's cue, I'm queuing. And in Brooklyn, they don't freaking queue. They just bogart. I want my order. I was next, and the guy behind the counter, you get the order, buddy. Not me. It's like, you better get with it, dude. And finally, it's like, it happened a couple times. I said, I want, you got it, buddy. And I got a response. I said, oh, oh, that's the way it works here. So we talked about walking. It's like an art walking through Manhattan during, the lunch hour, the morning rush hour, the evening rush hour, and there's an art to walking in Midtown Manhattan because people all over. It's a walking city. Everyone's walking. So my reflexes, and I liked it because when I was a kid, I liked that where I could just move and flow, and people were coming, and I could slide right past them, whatever. And every now and then, there's someone like a little block car, some little chickies thinking that they're really, really cute. And I got very New York. And these bras are about to obstruct my flow. I just barrel right through them. And it wasn't just me. Anyone who was a regular New Yorker, that's how they worked. And that's how you survived in that city. But anyway, I forgot when I got into that.
Well, we were
I
just
got
talking
immersed
about.
in that loop. The loop. All of that loop. But anyway.
So, we were talking about secret fetishes or people,
Yeah, secret
where you
fetish.
change people's lives and then they give credit to Jamba Juice or they give credit to their vegan lifestyle and you're just like, oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Literally pull someone from the jaws of death.
Mhm.
And then they decide they're going to give all the credit to some herbalist. When we were present, when I was pulling that person out of that hole.
Or you healed someone of lupus and then they gave it all credit to vegan
Oh,
lifestyle.
yeah.
And they look sickly again.
Yeah, she
Now,
started. Yeah, she's
starting to look sick
yeah, she
again.
started to look
Starting to
sickly
look
again.
gray.
That was like 3 years ago, and the person also people who are so wrapped up in the religion, and I said yin of yin is religion, so they have a concept of if someone can do a certain kind of thing, they consider it to be like a miracle, or they consider, okay, if it's a miracle, maybe I should see this person as a deity, but he doesn't fit that, that description of what I was told that, a deity is, and I'm not interested in being a freaking deity anyway. But they will, in other words, take, and that's usually the ones I have the most, they do that a lot. People are just like, knee deep in religion, and they're desperate, and they come to me for help. And, the church sends them to all the doctors and so on and so forth, and this specialist and that specialist, but I still got this thing, they just say it's terminal, I'm gonna die. I check it out, it's an attachment. You don't have to die right now. So I deal with it the way I deal with what I know, which is more than they know. I fix it, they're fine, and some look at it like, I went to the hospital, he cut the thing out, I feel better, I'm going my way, like they just had some kind of operation that density likes to just cut pieces out of people. Then you don't feel the issue here because the thing that was causing the issue is no longer there. I mean, that the things we're attacking is no longer there for them to attack. So they cut out a piece of the liver where the thing was attached to. Oh, I don't feel anymore because, we cut that thing out, but it moved to some other area. Or sometimes it starts to infest the rest of the liver or the kidneys or some other part. So as Mrs.A was saying, it does go along the line of secret fetish, but I'm expanding on how it works when I work on individuals. And some consider me a secret fetish, they're not going to tell anyone about me because they want the attention of this person to do this thing that no one else has been able to do for them. And they want it all to themselves, like Ralph.
And the next thing they do, sometimes clients do, or other people do, they'll, like Ralph tells Vanellope, who happens like telling her, you're the coolest kid in the whole arcade. They try to butter you up.
Oh yeah, I got that.
Just to keep you as their secret fetish. Like, oh, I won't tell anyone, but I will praise you. It's like, but you can't live on praises. You better fork over something valuable.
Oh, well, when I was younger, I was a sap like that. But I tell you, I really enjoyed my time in New York because it hardened me really good. And it wasn't just to, turn me into a brooder or anything. It's just, I got really into a serious logic for what the real world was about. So there are those who like, oh, you saved my life. And I'm like, baby, I'm living in New York. I'm acclimated. You're trying to jerk me around with your compliments. Save your compliments. If they're genuine, cool. But don't butter an extra, put extra butter on it. And I've had individuals do that, trying to jerk me around, trying to play me. Those people are no longer clients.
And some of them had to come clean so that they could remain clients. And they're like, I've been doing all this acting all this time, and I was just lying, and I was just trying to like entertain myself by lying to you.
Yeah, and I said, look, I'm not an idiot. I observe everything. I'll tell people everything that I know about them when they're having sessions, because there's things that they're hiding, and if I tell them, they'll implode. They're not ready for it yet. I have to step into the point where I know you're trying to jerk me around, and the only person you're hurting is yourself. You don't hurt me, because I'm not a fool. I'm not an idiot. I'm very clever. I know what I'm doing, and no one knows how I do what I do. I'll show you how to protect yourself. I give you some pointers on how you can do as much as you can do if you're a Neo Shaman, but you'll never be able to do what I can do. And you'll never know everything that I know. Because one, you don't have a rambler on the program.
It's not within that person's capacity for their consciousness.
Yeah, well, literally that's what it means. Yeah, literally what it means. So I'm doing what I'm doing a whole lot for you. I'm doing what you can handle, what you can do, which is, if you think in terms of when you first came and where you are now, if you have some dreams of being, me, or, I've had some to the point where they figure, okay, I get all your secrets, okay, and there's the seat you're sitting in, and I'm going to shove you out now because you're foolish enough to tell me everything. You're a fool. I don't tell people everything.
And even if you did, they can't do it.
And they can't do it anyway. If anything, if I tell you too much, you'll hurt yourself. And people have.
Yep.
And it's not a whole intense stuff. It's just this much. And they go out and hurt themselves. So anyway, we're now back from me being a secret fetish. And what was it?
Okay. So the next thing is about, like, for example, people will, like, Ralph is like, what would I do without you, Vanellope? Like adding more weight and more weight and more weight.
Yeah.
The 27 years of my misery, more weight, and then like.
You're responsible for my, for my happiness. You should accept that you're responsible for me, other than yourself. You're more responsible for me, later for you, for me. Look, I give you compliments. Isn't that enough? And and Penelope more or less said that's not enough at one point.
Yeah, Penelope said it's not enough.
And he's just devastated. How can you not fall for my ruse?
Yeah. How could you leave me when I care about you? It's like you're a feeder.
Oh
Get
God,
the heck away from me.
he's so freaking hateful. And that's
They tried
the
to be
majority of
in
this movie. I just like, I'd probably send him with a permanent smear. Just every time he says anything. So, he's the kind of individual I just can't stand.
Yeah.
So anyway.
If I'm happy, then everyone else should be happy. If I'm happy, the world is happy because, he thinks the world and everyone else is an actor in his play.
In his play, and if you are aware, and you become aware that individuals are playing you that way, you probably end up with a stink face every time you see them, like also, because you're aware of that, and it means that you had someone do that to you, and you got away from them. And you don't want that to happen again. And here comes someone else skipping up the smiley face and starts all the overly complimenting you and all this other kind of stuff. And all of a sudden the stink face starts to arise. So why are you looking that way? Or what way? I mean, I don't even know how I look at times when people are actually repulsing me. I try to keep a poker face, but sometimes it's just difficult.
And you were talking about how if someone thinks that everyone else is just an actor in their play, and if they're happy, everyone else should be happy, and that the world, it revolves around them, it's a sign of insanity.
It is a sign of insanity. It really is. It's we're toying with the definitions of narcissism opposed to self-centeredness or just selfishness. In narcissism, they're talking about primarily someone who's into their grooming and trying to look really good all the time. But Ralph, he's walking around in freaking overalls and no shoes, and so he's just basically the classic selfish and self-absorbed individual. So selfishness and narcissism are two different things. But that was just for my own, for my own clarification.
So the Vanellope's pretty interesting character. She knows that she has, if anything's gonna change, she has to be the one to make her life interesting.
Mhm.
And so there's, after that they're going on. She asks Ralph a question. You know, is there nothing in your life that you'd like to change? And he's like, no. You know, he just repeats the routine. He repeats the loop. You know, it's like he's in his mind, he's like still like letting it go past him and reviewing that same loop over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Then, for example, you were talking about people who live in a town and everyone in that town works at a factory, and how they all end up getting a gold watch when they retire.
Well, they're going for the gold watch.
They're going for the gold watch.
Mhm.
And you're maybe like whole towns and whole cities can sometimes be in their own loop, where everyone ends up doing the same thing, the same job, the same end of their lives, and they all, you know, go down at a certain age.
Yeah, because they've been convinced to believe that that was the best they can do. You know, get an easy, get a job at the factory. I had some relatives like that, and there was the school that I graduated from in Michigan. That was the mindset of the locals. You know, that if they didn't have a parent who had a business that they were going to go into, then they worked at the Lazy Boy factory, or they worked at the Ford factory. You know, it's all about getting a job, getting a job, getting a job, getting a job. And later, for you're seeking anything that would satisfy you in a holistic way, or even seeking happiness. I had the father unit told me once when we had it out for like the first time, I had to confront him because he was bogarting into my life and just like popping in whenever he wanted to, knocking on my door. And, you know, so I'm coming out of the shower, you know, knock on the door, there he is, and I'm with the towel. I'm like, man, you know, can't you at least give me a heads up that you're coming? He's just like, just pop in, just pop in. And he was a feeder. That, you know, that aggravation was essence for him. He was a feeder. So we ended up having it out. And actually, I went off in this direction, realized it's a loop. And once I realized it's a loop, I actually forgot the question. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. It was just about how, I was thinking about how like cities and countries can be loops in and of themselves, like where they all have this homogenous behavior.
Yeah, I'm back in.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So one of the things that happened, I wasn't interested in the factories working, just getting a job and working. I had some aspirations. I wanted an interest in my life, you know, artist by nature. And that's one of the cool things about being a real creative. When you're a creative, you actually, you know, if you're really a real creative, you like to explore. So when you want to explore and you're not afraid of, I mean, the one cool thing about the old man, we moved around. We didn't stay in one area for all that long. It wasn't like, you know, military kids or anything like that, because that's moving around under a structure. It was whatever the whims that the old man had, and sometimes not so great, but they were interesting. I learned not to be afraid of change through that experience. And that's not like he wanted to teach me that. It's just that's what I picked up from that experience. So I would, you know, these guys who looked down on me when I was in high school wanted all of a sudden to talk to me after, you know, a year or two after getting out. And I'm doing this and that. And some of these guys were just total losers. They didn't have a job or anything, but they were popular in school. But all of a sudden they're zero, you know, outside. And all of a sudden they want to talk to me, and they ask me, you know, because they want me to, you know, share my misery because they figure this is a miserable guy, you know. And then they find out I'm not such a miserable guy. That I had aspirations. I'm going to school here, and you know, in the fall I'm going to be going to school in another state. He's stuck in this little rut. The guys who are stuck in the factories, all of a sudden, you know, asking me stuff. I said, you asked, and then the sour look goes over their face. Because all of a sudden, what they believed in was dashed, that they were better than me, and then all of a sudden they said, damn, he's got more balls than we do. And it showed on their face. Last time they ever wanted to talk to me. And it was cool because I don't want to talk to lame ass, boring ass people anyway. But that's what Mrs.A was, they're talking about. People get into a certain mindset, and if they can't convince you at the beginning, when you first start to make plans, to stay in the box that they're in, and you kind of slip through, and they just assumed that I was a loser, and they weren't, and it turned out they were the losers. And so they didn't pay much attention, and I continued to go and never looked back. But, that's the kind of mindset, this Ralph, he just assumed that that Penelope is limited like all the other people in the arcade, and that they didn't have any problem with just staying in their game and doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. He assumed that she was, just this static individual, just like he and the rest of them were, when she had other aspirations. And also in the first one, she was an outcast anyway. She glitched and so on. I remember people talking about artists like we were just freaking weird and glitchy. Artists are just weird. Well, you know what? If that keeps boring ass people away from me, I'll glitch. And it did keep a certain number of people away from me until they realized that you can become successful being a glitch. And they couldn't figure out, because they didn't have the creativity to figure out how to do what I did. And some others who did, and took the chance and left their little towns and moved to New York City, or moved to Los Angeles, moved to some big city that everyone said, oh my goodness, the big city is very dangerous, you're gonna die. And I had a guy tell me, it was my landlord from Los Angeles, tell me when I decided to move to New York, no, you're too nice, man, you're not gonna make it there. They're gonna mug you and kill you, literally. And I'm like, God, you really don't know me. So, all of this is a representative of real life. In this movie, it's representative of a certain type of mindset, and Ralph, he represented the majority, not the minority, the majority. Penelope represented the minority.
So you'll see people like, if you'll think of countries as loops, nations as loops, I've seen many people that come from other countries come into America and they just begin to assimilate into that loop. And then they begin to, adopt the mindset, the American dream, running for money, all these things. Or, for example, they go to another country and that country says, well, what, this is what we eat. This is how we act. This is how we behave. Assimilate into our loop. And they're like, oh, okay. And sometimes they get sucked in there and then they become one of us.
Yeah, I even have that, coming into Thailand, certain individuals I met, and they're trying to tell me how to be Thai.
Oh, yeah.
And the longer I was there, I have no desire to be Thai. I never have any desire to be anybody's, carbon copy. I am me. Yeah. So it wasn't just so much about them. It's like me leaving the town where I graduated from high school, or the area, because I didn't live in town, but the area where I lived in, where I graduated from high school. But they, and then there are some people who come from other countries, come to America. They have children, and their children start to experience what America is about. And they look at their parents, and I don't want to speak badly about America. And I am a guest, and I am thankful that I'm here because I live in a one-room hovel in India, and so on and so forth. They say, okay, that's fine and dandy, Mom, but this is what's going on here. Crap ain't so easy for me and my brother. So we have to finagle, and we have to be aware of the nastiness that exists in that country so that we can survive. So we won't walk around with our head up in the clouds like, you, Mom, and end up being a victim or feeling that, I have to do the Pledge of Allegiance, when everyone's doing it. My mom was super radical. She said, don't stand up and do that shit when we were in school. When I was in elementary school, I was too afraid not to. But she's like, you don't have to do that crap. Make you do it up and down. And she would come down. And she thought they were forcing us to do anything that was outside of what she wanted us, thought we should do. Which wasn't like she was bossing it, but she was on the right page. It's about being an individual, thinking for yourself. Anyway.
And we have 1 minute left.
Okay, 1 minute to go.
So if anyone has a question, or we'll just wrap it up.
Yeah, we can wrap it up. We're going to continue. Mrs.A had an inkling that we probably have to do this in two parts. So on the next, what we're going to do on the women's forum, we're going to pick it up on the women's forum and finish
Yeah,
finish
finish
up.
the review, yeah.
But again, I don't know until we get into it as to how much information is going to come up. But there's so much in this movie, even though it seems like some goofy movie that has to do with what really goes on in the world.
They do a lot of conditioning for little children's movies.
Yeah.
People think, oh, it's a kid's movie. Well, there's nothing serious about that. That's where they start you off. Why wouldn't it have a lot of crap in it?
Yeah. Because little kids believe more of what they're looking at, or what they're seeing. When I would watch certain things with my kids, I said, that's fake, It's not real, and I just made it a habit. And they didn't, they got used to it, so they didn't like, they go, And so their little friends were like, I'm gonna be a Power Ranger and I'm gonna do it. Because they said, that's fake.
Don't say that.
Man, you're the turd in a punch bowl, aren't you? Or the Santa Claus story.
Yeah, that's.
When some grown-ass man's telling my kids that they're losers because they don't believe in Santa Claus.
Yeah, or I'm a queen. You're like, that's not real. Don't say that.
Yeah, oh man, I can go some on that queen stuff. This
Yeah.
grown-ass women talking, I'm gonna be treated like a queen. What the hell is that? What are you gonna be, a reptilian? That's another pipe dream. They run around, I'm gonna be treated like a queen. 30 years later, they're waiting for their prince to come. Have you seen what's in the mirror? They're not Prince material, and I wouldn't be interested in Prince. There's some stories about that too.
We already have some. We have a Little Mermaid review with a Prince situation, and with Cinderella.
Well,
as
Cinderella,
well, with the
Prince, it's all a ruse. And if you're a grown-ass woman talking about I'm going to be a queen, you better reflect on that, because it's bullshit. So anyway, I'm going to sign off with that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming. Okay.
And those of you who don't know who Yin of Yin is, watch the 7th Women's Forum, and you'll find out who that is. So thank you, everyone. Have a nice day or evening.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. I always have to wait till someone says something,
I know, it's like,
so that we
I
have been
turn
talking
off.
to ourselves for the last half hour. So anyway, okay, guys.
Thank
Thanks for coming again, and thanks for the questions. All right.